Well, one thing that hit me in the wake of the Jack Ginnivan illicit drug fallout is AFL players have an image problem. There's a perception from the public that the majority of players are drug users. The players and their union, led by Paul Marsh and Patrick Dangerfield, urgently need to address it. They've been too soft on illicit drugs. If you perused any of the online commentary responding to Ginnivan's admission that he used drugs at a hotel in January, you would have noticed that hardly anyone was surprised. Here's a sample of the thousands of comments posted online. Go to any nightclub on a weekend and you'll see AFL players from all clubs doing it. This isn't a bombshell, it's the least surprising thing I'll read today. Wow, he's one of 400 players using drugs. You wouldn't have a league if every AFL player was tested, they read. Why don't clubs, players, the AFL and the Players Association see this as problematic? I find it mortifying that a young player with 12 months of education like Ginnivan can be socialising with teammates at a pub after a pre-season camp and think it okay to duck off to the toilet to snort ketamine in a cubicle off a car key. Yet not one of his Collingwood teammates have been brave enough to condemn their teammates' actions. It is comical that they would have taken it more seriously had Ginnivan walked into training smoking a cigarette or vaping. Collingwood slapped him on the wrist with a 2-game ban, and Marsh and the Players' Union have remained silent. Don't worry about Ginnivan though. In 4 weeks, he'll be off the front page and we will have moved on to discussing how he's getting harshly treated by the umps again. Western Bulldogs player Bailey Smith is the AFL's most influential off-field player. His 352,000 Instagram followers is testament to that. Kids worship him. Female fans adore him and male fans want to be him. Last year he put his hand up and admitted to being a drug user. Only a few months on, we and his various sponsors have moved on. St Kilda didn't care that Brad Crouch, while playing for Adelaide, was stung in a taxi carrying illegal drugs. They offered him a 4-year deal soon after and made him one of their highest paid players. For some reason, there is a belief that these drugs aren't dangerous. Never mind the lives that were ruined from the drug-fueled culture at West Coast or the cautionary stories such as Geelong Premiership coach Bomber Thompson and St Kilda All-Australian defender Sam Fisher. Collingwood pair Josh Thomas and Lockie Keefe were banned for 2 years for testing positive for a prohibited substance, which they admitted probably entered their system from taking illicit drugs. At some point this week, just as they have done for the last 20 years, the Players Association will vow to support and educate players on illegal drugs. It doesn't work. The illicit drugs policy isn't a deterrent. This perception, Bucks, of AFL players bothers me. Until the game condemns illicit drug use the same way it would cigarette smoking, nothing will change. Does the AFL have an illicit drugs problem? I don't know, but that's the perception. 1300 736 736. Welcome into you, Bucks. How have you digested this story?
That's a great take, Kane, and that was thorough. It was considered, and I can tell that you're concerned that, like, that the tar that everyone is tarred with this brush in the AFL environment. Well, do you feel because you were an AFL player and it was nowhere near your?
It's the industry that you work in, and I just feel like there is a belief that all players are using drugs. Now, that's not my experience. I never once saw it. Now, granted, I was so naive with stuff and still so naive to this day. So and people would laugh at me for how naive I am, but I never once saw it in 15 years. And that was a long time ago now, and perhaps things have changed. But why is it just accepted that perception of AFL players, and why are we not doing anything about it? Now, I can see that Darcy Moore's speaking on Channel 9 at the moment as I look up the screen. So perhaps he may condemn the actions of Ginnivan. But we just accept it and we move on. Okay, Bailey Smith, he was taking drugs. When we move on 2 weeks later. The same will happen with Ginnivan. Like, I'm not even critical of Jack Ginnivan because I can't be, because the industry seems to accept this and we're not hard enough on it.
I don't think it's not condemned. I absolutely believe it's condemned, but I don't believe that it does any good to continue that over a sustained period of time. It's like, when is it enough to let it go and to see it as a learning opportunity for a young man, a 20-year-old man or 20-year-old boy really, who's trying to learn how to become a man, who's trying to learn how to become an AFL footballer. You're going to have these, sometimes they're going to pop through the surface and sometimes they don't, but they are learning opportunities and they are growth opportunities.
How many learning opportunities do you need though? He's got how many examples? He's got Bailey Smith. He's got 12 months of education. And don't get me started on the creep that filmed him in a toilet cubicle. That's where we're at, and then ran to the media and tried to sell it. So that's what players have to deal with. I get that some guy who won't be named and shamed can take his phone into a toilet cubicle and film someone and then run to the media and try and sell it. He's a disgrace as well, and he should be named and shamed. But the issue that I'm worried about is that, and I'll ask our audience, is your perception of AFL players that everyone is doing it? And is it? Do you think it's correct?
Well,
Do you think?
I'd take it out of an AFL sphere. I'd say, okay, in society, if you're 30 or under and you're hearing this, come through the text lines and tell us, all right, so say you've got 10 mates. Out of those 10 mates, include yourself in that, out of those 10 people, how many would have dabbled? So is it 5 out of 10? Is it 2 out of 10? Is it 9 out of 10? And how many do it consistently? How many take illicit drugs consistently? Now, an AFL footballer is part of society, but he has a responsibility beyond himself to his teammates, to his club, to his organisation, and then the potential role model status that they assume. The cautionary tale for me, the two examples you used, Bailey Smith and Josh Thomas and Lockie Keefe, the one that I think is the greatest lesson that needs to be known isn't the Bailey Smith one. It's actually JT and Keefe, who ended up had a performance-enhancing substance that was laced into something else that they'd taken. So clenbuterol, I believe it was laced in. Now they missed out on plying their trade for 2 years because they got caught into the ASADA code and not the illicit drugs policy. If you do the same thing now, it's 4 years. So you do 4 years and that's your career over. So that's the real cautionary tale for any.
But is it not?
Because you don't know what you're putting in your body.
And Ginnivan, I'd be surprised if the anti-doping agencies aren't rocking up to training today to test him for that. Now, it's a separate illicit drugs program, and we are all familiar with that now. But they should be there today testing to make sure that was the case. It was in January, so it's probably out of his system. I understand that. But that's the risk. But that also annoys me that people think it's not dangerous. Because I look at the lives that were ruined out of the culture at West Coast. And there was half a dozen, a handful, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is, and the fallout continues today. And there's other examples of Sam Fisher that I mentioned. People, the belief that this is, they're okay, it's not dangerous.
No, but so here we go. 6 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 5 out of 10 regularly. 9 out of 10 of my mates have dabbled, 5 out of 10 consistent. I'm 28 years old, 80% at the, people at the pub do it. It's normal. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10, and I'd say that the vast majority of other groups do.
But we thought smoking was normal.
No, I know, but that doesn't make it right. But this is so Jack Ginnivan was there after training camp. Now, the fact that timing is everything as well. January, in the middle of a training, like at the end of a training camp. Now, that's where I hear him when he says, I was drinking, I made a poor decision. And that's absolutely he did. Now, it is every individual's choice what they do and what they do not do, unless it affects other people. When it affects other people, you've got to consider more than yourself. Now, we'll all have different thresholds on what we think is acceptable and what isn't, and what is fair and what isn't, and what is risky and what isn't. But when other people are involved, and in this case, it's your, as he said, his 44 teammates who are influenced and dragged into it as a result. Now, he did it with his non-AFL mates, and apparently we know the substance, and apparently, like there's
I think there were some players.
There's still a lot of things that are supposed in this. Jack made an error in judgment. He's owned it.
He's done everything right post-script, but there is now the right way to go about doing it, because there's an example of Bailey Smith who did the same, and then we all moved pretty quickly. Yep, did it wrong, got it wrong, and we move on. My point is, all these texts are coming through, and it's a great point from you, and I'm naive, and you're right, and our texts are just confirming that. They're all 6, 7, 8, 9 out of their mates in that age bracket doing the same. We've got to hold AFL players to a higher account. They're highly educated, and the risks and ramifications are higher than that of the general population. And I hate that we just accept it, because smoking was accepted in the 80s, and we just, okay, and now it's not. Like if you walked in smoking a cigarette to this studio, you wouldn't be allowed in now, Lux. Like, so why do the players and their association and the clubs just say, okay, well, it's part of society, we've got to learn to do it?
Yeah, but at the same time, if he was smoking in the toilets and got filmed over the top, that's not going to carry much weight, is it? So look, there's a social consideration in all of this. When I think about Jack and I think about the situation that he's in, I think about, like, I've got teenage sons, 16 and 14, and they are going to make blues as they go along. How I treat that is going to dictate how well I can parent, how well I can support them as they go through these risk stages in their life. So if you're Craig McRae or if you're a senior leader at the football club, you've actually got to consider, if Jack Ginnivan was my child, how would I treat it? And you wouldn't be throwing him under the bus. You wouldn't be hanging him. You would actually be supporting him as much as you possibly can, because he's made a blue. He's copping an appropriate response in the public sphere, because they're all shocked that he would be in that position to do that. The society tells us that that it happens more regularly than we believe. But for a young player that's made a blue like that, he's going to need more support than he is a kick up the arse, because he's already judging himself harshly on and accepting a whole heap of criticism as a result.
Darcy Moore has spoken. We'll turn that around and get that for you shortly, courtesy of Channel 9. So we'll bring you that shortly. In the meantime, Richard has been waiting, wanting to have his say. Richard, good morning.
Morning, boys. Thanks for the opportunity to share. Look, I think for me, as a grandfather now, drugs has been around for a long time in the footy space. I'm an old footballer from Broadmeadows, and I remember fellas used to snort speed before a game. It was part of the culture. It was part of society at the time around those mates. And I know a few guys that are still hooked 40, 50 years later.
That's what I want to ram home, that just the belief that this is innocent, harmless, and nothing will go wrong.
Well, no, I don't think anyone has that belief.
No, but I think that the text coming through, if 9 and 10 of the mates are doing it, and it's like, oh, this is harmless and it's accepted and it's part of society.
No one said it's harmless. They said that's what it is. They dabble, and that isn't their individual choices. What we're learning from the text machine, and what probably I've become more aware of in the last 3 to 5 years, is how prevalent it is. And when you're around, like, so Jack Ginnivan, say anyone, like, I don't know, say Harry Mackay, we were just talking to him. He goes through school with 10 mates. All of them go into the workforce somewhere outside of an AFL club. And he goes out with those mates. He's going to be around it. We're all going to be around, you're all going to be around at some point. So you've got to understand the decisions that I've got to make and the things that I need to consider are different to my mates now.
Did you have the information as a coach? So not the names, but the cross section of your playing list that you thought was testing.
It was a really muddy situation. The reason the illicit drugs policy was instigated was because WADA wanted to include it into the performance side of things, and the AFL didn't want to go down that path. But Andrew Dimitro was always keen to have the AFL at the cutting edge of social conscience and put the AFL players on a pedestal of how to be, and social change and doing the right thing. And this caused an issue, because we're expecting young men who are still working themselves out under the bright glare of expectation with AFL in a professional sense, all of a sudden to become the role models for how to go about life, and you can't. No one's perfect. Jack Ginnivan isn't perfect. He's made a blue. He'll own it.
Is it hard enough though? Is the illicit drugs policy hard? And the AFL players will say, "Well, we don't have to put our hand up to do it, and it's an education model, and we've got to be careful of mental health." But essentially, players can get away with doing it by citing mental health, and I don't think the deterrent is strong enough for the illicit drugs policy.
I have a real issue with how it was initially drawn up because people believe it's you say, is it hard enough? It wasn't drawn up as a punitive program. It wasn't drawn up to penalise. It was drawn up for welfare. So the AFL didn't really want to name and shame.
Has it achieved what it set out to achieve?
They actually wanted to throw a towel over it, hide it, and then support these people and educate the ones that were taking it more often. That actually it broke trusts inside football clubs because that information was withheld from coaches or GMs of footy. It went to CEOs de-identified, and club doctors were asked to play this dual role between supporting the individual and having this information and not disclosing it to the people that were in charge of their welfare inside the club environment. So that started around 10 years ago, and I think it's slowly improving because the publicising has come from 3 strikes to 2. But I think clubs should know immediately.
But no one ever gets named and shamed.
No, Travis Tuck was the only example of someone that we knew at the early stages, and that was because it was an issue. So. And like this, this doesn't pop to the surface very often. And the only reason it's there because Channel 7 have been offered some vision of it. Otherwise, it would be under the surface.